Good morning. I'm Pete Greer. If you haven't been here before, I'm a retired biology teacher. I have a real passion for creation science, and I have a real hard time convincing people of the importance of a proper view of Genesis chapter 1, especially in our faith and how it affects our culture. And that's kind of what I'm going to go into today for a little bit. But there's a new DVD coming out from Creation Ministries International, and this DVD kind of shows what's happening to our youth. I want you to listen to the statistics right at the beginning. The guy who's sitting there by himself is going to give you some statistics of what's happening to our church youth when they're not properly grounded in creation. Then you're going to see some interviews with the actual youth. And we had 10 of those DVDs because Pastor Joe, unbeknownst to me, had ordered 10 of them before, and he didn't know I was going to do this. I didn't know I was going to do this until about a week and a half ago. So we should have got a lot more because they're all gone. So we'll probably get some more for you if you want it, because I think you'll see this is very important for us. So let's go ahead. Sound didn't work first service. We're praying it's working this time. I think they got it fixed.
66 to 88% of young people are leaving the church, never to return.
66 to 88%.
Direct correlation with those who've remained in the faith and those who've left the church.
Creation or evolution? Which do you believe?
I'd probably have to say evolution. Evolution.
Is there any powerful argument that makes you think evolution is true, that causes that confusion?
I think the studies that have been done on apes and monkeys are pretty compelling.
I think that the genetic sequence can change over time, over millions and billions of years.
Mostly fossil records and just databases of really just the fossil records.
In your church background, were you ever exposed to any scientific evidence for creation by the church leaders, pastors, anything like that?
Definitely nothing in particular, no.
No, I don't believe so.
Do you still attend church today or not anymore?
Only for holidays.
We kind of stopped going to it as a family, but...
You see, there's one worldview that every single person in this country has been exposed to. The idea that evolution is true and that the Bible's account of origins is nothing more than fairy stories. When we demonstrate to believers that the evidence strongly supports the historical account of the Bible, not only is their faith ignited, but they become excited about sharing the Bible's truth with family, friends, neighbours, and even co-workers.
Did your church leaders, student leaders, bring in any creation teaching that showed you there was scientific evidence to support the Bible's account of creation?
Yes. Yeah, we learned a lot about different creationist scientists and had proof of young Earth creationism.
What are you studying now?
Biology.
Biology, right. Steeped in evolution. So, but you're not convinced by the evolutionary arguments in your biology classes?
No.
Still attend church today?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yeah, every Sunday.
Would it be fair to say then that being able to discuss creation openly at church has helped strengthen you in that area, prepare you for what you've learned here at college about evolution?
Yes.
Okay, I hope you can see it's important that it came in right at when you're saying 66 to 88% of our youth, not youth, but church youth, are leaving the church when they go to the higher education institutions because of what they get indoctrinated with there. They're not prepared for it. And they're not prepared for it because the church isn't teaching it. Dr. Tony Evans, in 2.5 weeks ago, I think Isaac was sick, and Pastor Joe had been sick, so we listened to the study, and you can listen to it at Calvary Chapel Philadelphia website, and it's an awesome study. But he said, he asked the question, he happens to be a black pastor, by the way. He says, why are we going through these things in our culture again that we went through in the 60s? Why is it happening again? Why are we seeing this explode in our faces again? And he said, I really think it's because the churches and the pastors have not taught the truth of God's word as to how he considers humankind and looking at these things from God's view, the Creator God, he put the creation into effect. What does he say about these issues? If we would teach these to our church people and it would be in our culture, we wouldn't have these huge issues. Yeah, it would be there, but it wouldn't be like it is today. There's always going to be those that don't believe, right? So what I want to do today is, as a substitute pastor for today, as Pastor Joe is on a staycation, he's called it, okay? And so turn to Titus chapter 3, because this is what pastors are called to do to a great extent. And then this is what we take kind of seriously here at Calvary. In chapter 3, this is just before Hebrews. Titus we don't talk about much, and so there's before Hebrews you got Philemon, a really little one, and then Titus, and Timothy's before that. So it says in verses 1 and 2, remind them. He's talking to Titus as a pastor, and he's telling Titus what he should do. Remind them, the church congregation, to be subject to rulers and authorities, to obey, to be ready for every good work, to speak evil of no one, ouch, to be peaceable, gentle, showing all humility to all men. Okay, there's a lot of challenging stuff right there, isn't it? So I'm going to be kind of touching on that area today. And this in verse 8, this is a faithful saying, and these things I want you to affirm constantly, that those who have believed in God should be careful to maintain good works. These things are good and profitable to men. But avoid foolish disputes, genealogies, contentions, and strivings about the law, for they are unprofitable and useless. Okay, so we have some admonishing that gets done. We have no qualms about saying when you go to vote in the polls, look at what values those people have and vote for the people that have the proper values according to the Bible, because that's what we're supposed to do. Those values that we hold dear to are these ones right here, that we are going to support the authorities as long as they're not contradicting God. We should obey them. If people would obey it, we wouldn't get so many killed by the police, and so on. So I'm going to kind of touch on that today in my teaching. I'm going to touch on this cultural issue that we have. Oh no, why did that come up? Charles, why did that come up? That's supposed to be hidden. Okay, I hope all those slides I hid don't come up. It'll be a tedious process. Okay, so at any rate, this is in Charlotte. This is the hot spot now, right? We got a big hot spot there, and we got this big thing arising again. I think the only thing that kept the first civil rights movement from becoming totally violent and having another civil war, basically, was when Dr. Martin Luther King came in and encouraged people to settle these things peaceably, without violence. And he saved a bunch of lives when he did that. So we need to, as Christians, look at, how does God view us? How does God view all the other people? And what should we do? So this is what I'm going to teach today. First of all, the biblical concept of kinds. So I'm going to, my teaching, I strive to destroy anybody's belief in the theory of evolution. If you're holding dear to that theory today, I just pray that you'll have ears to hear and eyes to see the lies that are inherent in that godless philosophy. So I'm going to expose those lies. And what does God's word say about mankind? We're going to look at the scriptures and see that, and we're going to look at biblical examples, and we're going to find out actually which of the two views, creation or evolution, lines up with what the Human Genome Project says about people. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to start in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 4 and 5. And this is the one that's being recorded, so I will have to read these for the audio version. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments, and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. I was very fortunate. My mom and dad both had very, I wouldn't say my dad had very, but maybe so, but my mom's mom definitely was very prejudiced But my mom and dad made a conscious decision not to teach us kids to be prejudiced against anybody for any reason. It's one of the best things they ever did for me. And I'm so thankful for that. But there's people in our culture who have been taught, these people are bad, don't mess with them. These people are not quite right, don't deal with them, and so on. That's embedded in our culture. So what I'm asking you to do, if you're a victim of that type of false teachings, and it was taught you by somebody near and dear to your heart, whether it's a university professor or a relative, I'm just asking you, please think about it. Does that thought agree with what we're taught in the Bible? That's what we want to look at today. We want to bring our thinking in agreement with what the Bible teaches us. So let's go ahead with that. We got two worldviews. We got the worldview that God created, and we got the worldview that everything came about by natural processes. It's called materialism, not in the sense that you want a whole bunch of worldly things, even though that's a result of it. But this type of materialism is you believe there's nothing spiritual going on in the world. That's the type of materialism. And it's also naturalism, falls into that same category. God's out of the equation. So we got God did it or God didn't do it. That's our two ways of looking at it. So I'm going to take you through some really basic stuff here with the point. By the way, I have materials to equip you. I forgot to say these 7 ways that evolution defies observational science. I wrote when I retired from teaching biology and I started doing this ministry. 7 ways evolution defies observational science. They say they're the scientific ones. Not so. On the back, Creationist website, you can go type in your question, get answers to your questions. So please pick up one of those papers that's in the back on the way out. So I also have some booklets back there. And I do teachings every Monday night in the God 411 room, which is just down the B line on the other side by the laundromat over there upstairs. And every Monday night I teach or show creation videos or whatever. This Monday night I'm teaching, you'll see in your bulletin, I'm teaching science in the Bible. These few videos here kind of come from that. It's a very simple thing about what we observe. Observational science is important, right? So what do we observe when dogs have babies? What are they going to have? Well, we know they always have other dogs. And dogs do change. Even the secular research shows that all dogs came from one original pair. And we say, yeah, the ark, and they say, we don't know where they came from, okay? So we know if they change into different dogs, they never become anything else. We've never seen that. They just become different dogs. And through time, to get a purebred dog, you have to breed out the dominant trait that was covering up the recessive trait. So the recessive trait can then manifest itself in the dog. So you get a bunch of really messed up genetically dogs when you got a purebred dog. They're very expensive to take care of. But they lose information till eventually you get down to what a Chihuahua, but we can trace that lineage all the way back. They've always been dogs. They're always going to be dogs. There's no new information added. This is a very important concept because I'm going to show you a slide in a little while where it says that we evolved through new information being added to the genome, which is a lie. It can't happen. So cows produce other cows, and cats produce other cats, and horses produce other horses. Chimpanzees, yeah. Is this not what we have observed? Has anybody ever heard an exception to the rule that things reproduce after their kind, just like Genesis chapter 1 says? Have we ever heard of an exception to the rule? We've never heard of it. It's never happened. And yet we're supposed to believe that it did, and it would have to happen millions of times for us to be here from a microbe, when you think about it. So here's the one, I mean, when I found this, finally could get some pictures for it. I'm sorry, the ones that are fuzzy are the ones I copied from another presentation. They didn't come out real clear. But this guy is a man who bottled evolution. Well, okay, what did he find? Well, he started off with E. coli bacteria. He studied them through 58,000 generations. That's more generations than, since we were supposed to diverge from our ancestors. And so this is the evolution experiment, and he ended up with, after studying 10 to the 14th power number of bacterial cells, he ended up with 12 replicate populations. And you go, oh man, what does that mean? Well, it means that the German Shepherd became a collie. Guess what? They were still all E. coli bacteria. And yet they call it the man who bottled evolution, when he just showed natural selection and adaptation. And there's mutations involved, but it never changed it from anything but an E. coli bacteria. So we see this, it's embedded in our culture. Here's the super bacteria. How do they become super bacteria? You know, where do they get the antibiotic resistance? They lost, they reduced, they lost, they reduced. So if you want to believe that man came about from a microbe, you got to believe that the microbes lost a bunch of information, and from that loss of information, here we are. I don't believe that myself. I think that's kind of hard to fathom. So it doesn't make any sense. It's logically a bad theory. It relies on things that we have never seen, the upward progression of life that evolutionists expound on. It requires the addition of new genetic information. Guess what? Science has never found a way to add new genetic information to a genome. We have never seen it in observational science. They just believe it happened because here we are, so it must happen somehow, but we haven't found the way yet. That's a pretty big belief system right there. Think about it. So we're going to look at the concept of races from both views. I'm going to start by looking at the first of the secular view, because we live on the planet of the humans who believe they're related to the apes, and if only that was science fiction, but it's not. It's the truth. There's so many people that believe that. And if your young person goes to a public school, they are not allowed to hear anything about Jesus or creation or anything associated with the Bible. It's the one thing in school they can't learn about. There's really no other forbidden areas except if you start talking about the Bible and Jesus and creation. So they're going to be brought up in that culture learning this, that they evolved from stupid. Because professing to be wise, they became fools. And that's where we are in our higher learning areas today. These higher intellectual professors deny God and his power. And so our young people grow up thinking that they came from that ancestry. And if you come from that ancestry, whatever you think is right, and so you just do it, and you're liable to do anything, including go to the mall and kill people or stab them or whatever. We're seeing that all over the place now, and it's related to what we're teaching our kids in school, I'll guarantee you. The guy at the Columbine, one of the original school shootings, went in there, he's wearing a shirt that said natural selection, and he left the thing, said he's going to school to practice natural selection. He's going to eliminate the less desirables. We belong to the ape family. You take your kids to a museum, you're going to get indoctrinated in evolutionary thinking. So you see that foot with the hair on it? It's supposed to be an ape's foot. I got news for you. That's a human foot with hair on it. But they want you to start thinking that we're related, so they don't show the 8-foot with the big toes sticking out like that, because they grasp on the limbs with their toes as well as their hands. And it's like that. That's a human foot with hair on it. And they do that stuff all the time. So to make these ape men, our supposed ancestors, they take a couple fossils and they make a drawing or a model of it, and they take apes and try to make them look more human, and humans and try to make them more ape-like. So first of all, we need to ask this question, is that your grandpa? And I want you to look at grandpa's eyes, okay? Look at grandpa's eyes, because I'm going to show you something in a minute that I want you to remember what grandpa's eyes look like. And there's grandma's eyes, okay, and grandma. Is that your grandmother? I don't think so. But anyway, here's a museum representation of the Lucy's kind, and notice the eyeballs in that. They're very human looking, no facial hair, in this area, and they make it look very human, don't they? And this one I love is love is in the air. You see the human qualities that they portray? This one is talking to us, I'm pretty sure. This one has a thought. He wants to tell us something. You see how they portray these things and make them look to get you to believe they do these things out of a couple fossilized bones, and they put these things together, and they get confronted with, the human-looking hands in Lucy and museums, and they say, well, this is the image we want to portray. We can't just keep changing our exhibits when the evidence changes. A person in the St. Louis Zoo actually said that. That's horrible. So here's a guy, a very human body there, using tools, more recent ancestor in their view. There's a hobbit, it's called the hobbits, the small people. They were human beings and they were malnourished probably. So this is what we learned in biology, is that we're only 3% different from our closest relative. This is what doesn't appear in the biology books. That represents 90 million differences. It can't possibly happen. The differences can't happen that fast through mutational rates. There's no rate that would allow that to happen. And now, as we've studied this further and mapped the human genome and the chimpanzee genome, we found out they only compared the parts they knew were similar. Now when they compare the whole thing, we're 30% different. So now you can multiply that times 10. Not only that, chimpanzees have one more chromosome pairs than we do. So they don't let you know that. They just say 3% different and let you think that we're related. Okay, here's a textbook that was in use when I was teaching biology. It said that humans have tails that disappear during their development. Let me tell you something. We've never had a tail. We've had a spinal column and the body catches up with it, and that's why it disappears. And yet they want the students to think something that's a lie, and so they put that in the textbook. They say that humans have gill pouches. Well, and that we're similar at that stage of our development with fish. Well, you know what fish use their gills for? Well, these are just folds in our skin, and that becomes bones in the inner ear and some glands in this area of your face that has nothing ever to do with respiration, with breathing, ever. Yet they put that in there so that if your young one is going to a public school, they're being indoctrinated with lies. So on this one, the print's a little bit better. Maybe you can see the last sentence in the text there. Okay? It says, new instructions on how to grow have been added to old instructions inherited from ancestors. What did I just say a little while ago? There is no known way to make new instructions. And yet they put that in there and they forget to say, oh, by the way, we don't know how they get new instructions, but we believe they do. That's not there. So it's just a bald-faced lie, really, but not in their minds. See, they're fully convinced that what they believe is right. Most of them have never been exposed to what I'm teaching you today. And so they're fully convinced that that's the only way that this could have happened. And that's why they're so hard to talk to sometimes. So now we got zoos putting humans in there, making them act like monkeys so that people think that we came from monkeys. And so this is in reference to that. Seeing people in a different environment teaches us that members of the public that human is just another primate, not that special. A lot of people think humans are above other animals. When they see humans as animals, it kind of reminds us that we're not that special. So this is the evolutionary view of mankind, all right? And this is one of the most harmful things in the evolutionary view, is this human tree. It's called the primate tree because we're considered primates to the evolutionists. And so you see at the top there, the most evolved people, and then you got some people down below look a little more primitive, and you go down there till they start looking more like the apes, All very nice drawings, no scientific proof behind them. A few isolated bones dug up here and there. And so that they look at a culture like this and they say, look, they're not as far evolved as we are in our modern civilized culture. So that kind of gives you a free license to treat them as subhumans because they're not fully evolved yet. You understand what I'm saying? So that's the danger of evolution. When I taught the homeschoolers here, biology and AP biology, back a few years ago, I told them, I want you to know evolution better than the kids in the public school know evolution so that you can counter their arguments. But it's head knowledge. Your heart knowledge is going to know that God's way is much better. And I'm glad to say that so far as I know it, they're all in that place in life because I built them up to be that way, as well as their very godly homes. We're working on that at the same time. Both of those things working together can do some strong things. So a timeline of evolution-inspired terror would include the names for those who might be listening and not seeing: Karl Marx, Leon Trotsky, Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, and for some reason my slide is off at the bottom, but that's Pol Pot. Every one of those guys either directly read and practiced Darwinian stuff, or they followed somebody who did. That's millions of lives. Eugenics. If somebody's not a effective member of our society, we just eliminate them. They call them useless eaters. They can't do anything constructive. You just let them die. Then there's abortion. Part of the abortion theory originally was we go through a fish stage. So if you take a baby at that point, you're destroying a fish and not a human being. Decades ago, we knew that was a lie, but we still have that philosophy out there that's taught at these abortion clinics. So we know we're fully human from the very beginning, which we'll see in a little while. The evolutionary effects of genetic engineering, we're messing with where God should only tread. I think biologically, a person, a geneticist, could take a strand of DNA from one person, transfer it to the strand of DNA from another person. Let's say for eye color, you'd like to have a blue-eyed child. They could probably make that happen if it was legal and lawful and you paid enough money. All the white supremacist groups, black supremacist groups, all the groups come from this distorted view of mankind. Eugenics, I just put this up there, it's kind of blurry because I transferred it from another one, but eugenics is the self-direction of the human population. Who gets to determine what the self-direction is the question. Do I get to determine it for you, or do you get to determine it for me? And I've never seen anybody say, you're more evolved than I am, so if you want to kill me, it's okay. I haven't ever heard that yet, but that's what that would say. Blacks slain for science's superiority theory, they're not as evolved as we are, so we can dig up their graves and use it for our scientific purposes, sent overseas to support a scientific trade. Horrible, horrible things from the philosophy of evolution. This is Margaret Sanger. She was the founder of Planned Parenthood. We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the most merciful thing that a large family does to one of its infant members is kill it. So this is the consequences of this evolutionary philosophy in our culture. Here's Stephen Jay Gould. He's an evolutionist, one of the most well-known ones. And he says that before 1850, there was a lot of arguments for racism, but after Darwin's work, the evolutionary theory, the scientists were saying that, science is showing that there is a difference between these people, and some of them are more evolved and everything. But Stephen Jay Gould says the data are worthless. That means we don't have any scientific facts to back up that theory, to back up that idea that one group of people is above another group of people. So he says if it did not follow a constraint of data or facts gathered from science, it must have reflected social prejudice, pure and simple. Yeah, he gets it. And this guy says we think that apes separated from humans about 5 million years ago, although there's no fossil evidence of that period of separation. Okay, so why do we believe it? Because it had to happen in order for us to be here, that's why. Okay. David Pilbeam, a very honest evolutionist, and he talked about how we teach our students these things about humans, that he says paleoanthropology, the study of human fossils, reveals more about how humans view themselves than it does about how humans came about. Very honest understanding there. And an interesting thing, he says, but that is heresy. Sounds like a religion going on here. So let's go to the Bible now. So this statement by Donald McKim, University of Dubuque Theological Seminary, in his Dictionary of Theology says, and I'm just going to read the black print, the doctrine of God as creator then is perhaps the most basic conception of God that we know. Would that be kind of proved out by what we saw in the DVD trailer? That 66 to 88% of the young people are leaving the church, and many of them will tell you they never learned anything about creation, and so they're believing the other. Okay, it kind of shows us it's important to understand this. So the vast majority of Christians do not behave differently because they do not think differently. They do not think differently because we have never trained them, equipped them, or held them accountable to do so. That's from George Barna, who's a famous guy for taking surveys in our culture. Okay, so this is a sad thing. The church should look different. We should have different values from our culture. And the sad fact is, he says, we don't see that much today. So let's apply that old ancient document written so long ago, full of fairy tales, to our lives today. Because in actuality, it's the Word of God that we can apply to our lives today. Only God could make that document that can do that. So this is God's view of mankind. God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. That's kind of an important thing at the bottom, because there's Christians that say theistic evolution or progressive creationism has happened. God created life and then he let it evolve into advanced form of primates, and then he breathed the breath of life into those two primates and they became humans. So we would have had an ancestor of a one-celled organism. But God said he created them male and female. He didn't create them as a one-celled organism and let them evolve into humans. And in Psalm 139, one of the most awesome passages 13 through 16, for you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. So that we would call that the womb. That's how they kind of called it in those days. So he's looking at us in the womb, and in your book, your eye saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they were all written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there was none of them. We're special to God. He gave us dominion over all the rest of creation, and he looks on us being formed in the womb. He looks on us, not a fish-like thing being formed in the womb. It's us. From the moment of conception, we're humans. That's what we believe here at Calvary Chapel. That's what we believe biology has taught us. Looking at the embryos in the womb, they're always human. They're not fish. So, science has dispelled that, but we still have it in our culture. So let's take a look. Are we evolutionized? I'm going to ask you a question here and see what you think. How many different races are there in the world today? Well, here's the answer. One. There's one race, humankind. And I'm going to back that up biologically now, okay? And scripturally. It's a biological fact that all humans belong to one race. That found out through the Human Genome Project. All human beings are Homo sapiens sapiens. Scientists divide us up to like Cro-Magnon man and all that kind of stuff. That's just, you can go and, two adult people from anywhere in the world can reproduce together and have a human child. That makes us scientifically, that's the definition of what a species is. So we're all Homo sapiens sapiens. Forget all the other little things that science puts in there. This is the truth. Acts 17:6 said, he has made of all nations one blood. You can go to anybody on this earth, and if they have your same blood type, you can take a transfusion from them and they can take one from you. I think that biblical truth written all those years ago has been borne out by science. So if we're all one blood, we started from Adam and Eve, then they had many sons and daughters. There's just a couple of them mentioned in the Bible. Noah and his sons came through that bottleneck of the flood, so we're all descended from those four families. And then as people came about, the people at the Tower of Babel built what would be called a ziggurat, tried to build a monument to reach up to the heavens in their own efforts instead of doing what God told them to do, which was spread out. They were building a big city. So God confused their languages. They spread out across the earth. As they spread out across the earth, moving into different climates and so forth that came about after the flood. Then we got all these different, colors of skin and different people groups and cultures. So are we different colors, or are we the same color, different shades? Well, I'm evolutionized because I still have a hard time not saying black and white. We're all brown. We got a pigment in our skin that's called melanin, and it's brown. Some of us have a little bit of melanin, some of us have a lot of melanin. Now, in case there's somebody that's sitting there saying, no, Pete, I'm white. I'm telling you, I'm white. So I don't see anybody out there that looks like this. They're albinos. The mutation took away the thin skin pigment, and I don't see any of those out there. Okay, so we're all brown skinned. Just touching on genetics really quick. In my Illusion of Human Evolution, I go into it to more detail. That's one of the talks I give. But we know that Adam and Eve didn't just have all genes for the light-colored skin. They didn't have all the genes for the dark-colored skin. Otherwise, we'd only have the light-colored and dark-colored skins. They had to be medium brown, and in one generation, genetically, they could have had every color of skin that we see on the earth today in one generation. Genetic variability can do that. So, an interesting quote from ABC News: more and more scientists find the differences that set us apart are cultural, not racial. Some even say that the word race should be abandoned because it's meaningless. I agree. And, by the way, the article was called We're All the Same, or the news program. In an article in the Journal of Counseling and Development, the author said the term race is so meaningless it ought to be discarded, because we are all one race. So how do we use that? So the amazing thing for an evolutionist and exciting for a Christian thing is that analyzing the mitochondrial DNA, there's a little powerhouse in your cells called mitochondria, and the DNA there you can trace lineages through it. And in humans from all over the globe shows unmistakably that all humans on earth have inherited that from one woman. Science backing up the biblical view. And researchers have calculated that this mitochondrial Eve, whose DNA we traced, lived about 100,000, 200,000 years ago. But as they studied this mutational rate, they're now saying, using the new clock of mutations, she would be a mere 6,000 years old. That happens to be about what young earth creationists say if you just use the genealogies in the Bible. Isn't it amazing? So here's the Human Genome Project findings. The most two diverse people in the whole world are 99.8% similar. Now, if we've been around for tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, you'd expect to see more of a difference than that. And the racial characteristics, 0.012% difference. So why are we focusing on that? Can you marry your relation? Yes, no, probably only after talking to Pastor Isaac. Okay. Well, if you just followed what I just said, can you not marry a relation? We all came from the same 2 people, then the same 8 people. You have to marry a relation. Okay, but God knew what was happening to our genetic code. God knew genetics before man did, and he said, don't marry anybody that's a close relative after about 2,500 years of human history, because he knew it was being corrupted, and that if you married a first cousin, you could be carrying the same genetic defect. You got to get that recessive gene from both parents for that mutation to show up in the offspring. So if you marry a close cousin, you might have that same defect through your common ancestry, and it could show up in the offspring, making a mutated offspring. God tried to protect us from that. God loves us. He gives us laws for our protection. We got to remember that. And this whole thing about you can't marry somebody that's got a different skin color than you, that's all a superficial lie again. In the Bible, God told the Israelites not to marry people from around them, not because they were different in color of skin or anything else. It was because they were worshiping idols, and they were pagan idol worshipers, and he didn't want these people to mix with them because he knew what would happen. We see it in Israelite history. They started worshiping the idols of the wives that they married when they disobeyed God. And pretty soon they're worshiping them instead of the one true God. So what these verses are telling us is, Christians, you should marry a Christian. If they're from a different culture, you gotta be real careful, because they got a different way of looking at life from you. But skin color has nothing to do with it. So the earth is not your mother, and that's not your father, but these are your brothers and sisters. Everyone, all people on this earth, we're related to through the biblical view. We all have value. We're all treasured by God. We've got a mandate to take care of this creation, and that's an awesome thing when you compare it to that deathly view of evolution. So this that we see in all the biology textbooks, they're all a bunch of nice drawings, but they do that to get you to think something that's a lie. And because they're trying to get you to think something that's a lie, I can say this is an illusion. They're trying to get you to see something that's not there. There is no relation between those things. Marvin Lubenow put it so succinctly. I love this quote. The true difference between evolution and creation is best determined by the value each places on human life. In evolution, the value of human life is practically zero. In creation, the value of human life is virtually infinite. It would not be stretching it too far to say the difference between evolution and creation is the difference between zero and infinity. Our being created in the image of God, the very thing that Darwin tried to erase, makes the difference. And that's the very thing that the professors and teachers are trying to eliminate from our youth, that they would know that they were created in the image of God. They're special creations, fearfully and wonderfully made. That's what our culture is trying to take away. So from God's view, do dark brown lives matter? Yes. Do light brown lives matter? Yes. You guys, I just got to interject. I feel so sorry for our policemen. They are in a horrible spot. Maybe one or two renegade guys that have the wrong reason for serving on the force have caused huge problems where innocent policemen are being ambushed. They're setting up traps for them to kill them. It's a horrible place to be right now, guys. I have empathy for them. In a little while, when I show you the prayer concerns, you'll see it. There's got to be a solution to this, and it's only if God's people stand up to what's going on that's wrong. So here's two, I think they're policemen from the uniform, and they're probably guys who go out on the beat together, and they watch each other's backs, and that's the way it should be. Well, let's see, do medium brown lives matter? Yeah. Do Oriental lives matter? Yeah. Native American lives? Yeah. God's people are all one thing. The Bible makes it so clear. And he gives us examples of ministering to the social outcasts. The Samaritans to the Jews were called dirty dogs. Okay? So what does Jesus say about the dirty dogs? Well, he told the story of the Good Samaritan. And he said, these pious religious guys would go around this man who had been killed and injured and half dead because they didn't want to make themselves ceremonially unclean. And then here comes the Samaritan along. He picks the guy up. He takes him in. He ministers to him, takes him in, gives him a hotel room, says, I'll pay all of his expenses. And what caused this story to happen was somebody said, Jesus, who's my neighbor? He says, love your neighbor as yourself. Who's my neighbor? And Jesus asked him back, he says, well, who do you think the neighbor was? And the guy says, the Samaritan. So there's no cultural boundaries to the love of Christ. The woman at the well was a Samaritan. Jesus went, she was an adulteress. She had had several husbands and wasn't living with her husband. I mean, she was living with a man, but not her husband at the time. And Jesus knew that, and he dealt with it. And that whole village came to faith, and they asked him to stay an extra 2 days with those dirty dogs, and Jesus did it. Peter and Cornelius. Cornelius was a Roman soldier who had oppressed the Jewish people for years and years. And God told Peter to go and minister to that family. Paul was chosen to teach to the Gentiles. That's us, the non-Jewish people. In Acts 1:8, it specifically says to go into Samaria and witness to them. Jesus told us to make disciples of every nation. And then we see in Revelation 5:9 that in heaven, in John's vision, he saw people from every tongue and every people group and nation redeemed by the blood of Jesus. Jesus says, whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord will be saved. If we're all one kind of people, we're all humankind, that refers to everybody on the face of this earth. That's God's view of mankind. But we got to deal with this reality that the Spirit expressly says that in the latter times some will depart from the faith, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons. Evolution is a doctrine of demons, folks. It promotes death. It's a demonic philosophy. That's in 1 Timothy 4:1. So, the question is, we always want to apply the Word of God. We don't want head knowledge. We want to internalize it. We want to see, where do I fit into this whole picture of what should be done, in our culture referring to these matters. Well, the first thing we have to do is whatever we do, we got to do it the right thing. If you're going to be a servant of the Lord, you must not quarrel or argue, but be gentle and loving to all. Be able to teach, so we got to equip ourselves to do that. Patient, in humility, correcting those who are in opposition. If God will perhaps grant them repentance so that they will know the truth. Okay, I love that verse. It gives me something to think about when I'm going into these situations. I want to be loving and patient. And in Ephesians 6:10-12, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. Therefore, put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. So we have to understand that we're looking at this person who's got this evolutionary belief that they're holding strong to. We're not fighting against them. It's the demonic philosophy that's taught in our culture we need to fight against. We need to try to lovingly convince them that they're believing in a lie, because if they continue to believe in that lie, they're going to suffer an eternal punishment. We don't want to see that. We should love people enough to stand up and say, that's a lie. Can I show you some things that'll show that to you? And it's hard to do. Believe me, when you teach a teaching like today, Satan makes me feel sick, and all the other guys here will tell you the same thing. You'll feel sick. You're not going to feel good about teaching this. But I believe it's biblically solid. And just this is another way to remind us that even when we have the truth and we have the gift of prophecy and mysteries and all knowledge, and we can move mountains, if we don't, it's cut off at the bottom. If we don't have love, We're just like tinkling cymbals. We're not worth anything in God's kingdom. We have to have that love, that patience, that gentleness about us. So, what do we do about Charlotte? What can we do? We live in Payson. Well, I think there's believers in Charlotte. I think there's believers everywhere on this earth and in this country. There's believers. So we need to pray that believers will have the courage to speak up for what's right and tell people, you don't go and loot a store because a policeman shot, one of your people out there. You don't use that for an excuse to go in and loot somebody's store that has nothing to do with that. And we just need to have the courage to stand up and say, it's not right to shoot somebody when they're unarmed, If you know that they're not armed, they shouldn't be shot. We got to have the courage to say that. Pray that we can make known how precious human life is to God, the Creator. And we need to pray for our law enforcement and our country because they're in a horrible spot. We need to pray for their protection from those who would harm them because they have the badge on, they represent the law. There's people that hate them just for that. And I have known personally some police officers here in Payson, good guys, Christian guys. They no longer are on the force. Matter of fact, they are no longer very functioning human beings because just what they saw here in Payson destroyed them to the point where they're suffering from severe post-traumatic stress syndrome from Payson. Let me tell you something. If you took our law enforcement out of Payson right now, evil would overcome this place within a month. I'm telling you. The law and the law enforcement guys keep us safe. Do they make mistakes? Yes. How can we not make mistakes? We're human. Okay? We can't go running around acting like a bunch of people that descended from apes because of that. So we got to pray for them. And for the law enforcers who know what's good and right, Christian guys, that they'll prevail over the few power-hungry guys who maybe don't have the right philosophy about why they're serving on that police force. And we need to pray for the Lord to be revealed to every people, tongue, and nation. We know the Lord's not coming back until that's a true fact. Because John saw that in heaven, so until that word gets there, we're pretty close to it. With our technology today, that's pretty close. It's actually pretty close. So it's, one of my best friends that I had can't even come to Payson anymore because of what he saw happen here when he was a police officer. And it just breaks my heart when I see these guys in that broken place. And it's all because we don't operate out of the biblical view of life. And we don't treat each other in the right way as brothers and sisters. So that's something we can pray for. And that's actually how I'm going to close the service today. I'm going to say a prayer. And if you just join with me, as I say it out loud, just join with me in your mind and agree with me. If you can see these things that are happening and see that the problem is we're not holding to the biblical view anymore in our culture, then just please agree with me in this prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, it is troublesome. As our brother said earlier, we need to pray for our nation, that we can be great again. We can be great because we're following God. So, Lord, if it's your will to use these civil unrests as a way to bring your people back to you, Lord, then I say, let it happen, Lord. What we want to see is that reformation. We want to see that revival in our culture, Lord, where we come back to you and serve you and honor you. And Heavenly Father, as we go out, Lord, let us stand up in our families, with our friends. Some of us probably know people that are in that affected area. Maybe we can just encourage them, Lord, to stand up for what's right. And Father, it's just so difficult to see these things happen and not be able to have a direct impact on it, but you are the all-knowing God. Nothing has surprised you. You know all about it, Lord. You know the hearts of these law enforcement officers Heavenly Father, I just pray that you'll be with them. I pray that those Christian guys or the guys who are trying to do the right thing in law enforcement, that they'll make sure that those renegades are taken care of internally so that this doesn't happen, Heavenly Father. If people will just stand up and be brave and courageous, and I think it will help a lot of the problems. But Father, as we look forward so much to your return, Lord, may we as individuals, Lord, may we take your gospel, your truths to our culture, to our families. May we be found faithful, a bride waiting for the groom to come, preparing the way for him. Lord, I just pray that we would all have that in our hearts today, and that we'll all remember to pray for our country, to pray for our law enforcers, pray for each other, that we may stand strong and be a light and be salt in our culture. And Heavenly Father, I pray these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. You guys, we'll always love to pray with people. If you've seen a stronghold in your life, maybe you never realized before, come up, we'll have some prayer. And otherwise, God bless you. Have a great day. And as Pastor Joe says, go out there and give them heaven.